It's time to talk about my birth story. So my little girl is 5 weeks old at the moment and she could wake up at any time. So we're just gonna do our best. So she was born on the 27th of the 7th. So I was 39 and 4. It all started the early hours of the morning. So 1:30 a.m. I rolled over in bed doing my 5-point turn as you do when you're heavily pregnant. I felt a little trickle. Okay, I need to get up out of bed. I went into the bathroom and I put on a pad, and no sooner I got the pad on and stood up, that pad completely filled. So I was like, okay, I'll put on another pad. I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try and go back to bed. By the time I'd gotten all comfortable, gotten back into bed, I noticed that I was already breathing quite heavily. So I was like, okay, my contractions have started. I decided to try and breathe through it for a bit. So it was probably about half an hour, and I'd snuggled back into Joshy, and I remember I was breathing quite heavily, almost down his neck, and I was like, I should probably get out of bed and start moving around. So I did at 2 o'clock, got out of bed, went and made myself a hot drink. So I had my Milo, and at the same time I got 2 heat packs, one that wraps around the lower back and then one for my neck. So I kept cycling through heating my heat packs up. I had the same kind of pressure in my pelvis that I'd had like in the weeks before that. So it was kind of just not contractions as such, just literally like there is a head jamming down on the pubic bone trying to get out. So that was the same sensation that I was feeling in that early labor. And then it got to a point where I was like, oh, I really feel like I need the TENS machine now, and I couldn't put that on myself. So I decided to wake Joshy up, and that was at 3 o'clock. In hindsight, actually, it goes so quick because I was like, I'll try and time my contractions instead of using timer app or whatever as I did in my previous labor. I just looked at my watch and then noticed when the contraction started and then noticed when it stopped. It was pretty consistent that it was like 3 to 5 minutes right from the get-go. So right from when it started, and my contractions were lasting about 45 seconds, that kind of ramping up and then coming back down again. I decided to wake Joshy. He helped put the TENS machine on. That was actually such a relief once I found where I wanted to be. We had the birth pool blown up. He had to move all of the furniture out of our room and put the pool in, and even had a blow up mattress in case I wanted to use that, so I didn't have to use our bed. And being the electrician that he is, it's all about safety, which I'm so glad, because he's like, there's water, we can't have it too close to this power point. So he had like lots of tarps and plastic. It literally looked like a murder scene. It's quite hilarious, but it was safe, and thankfully so, because I'll get there. But when he was filling the pool, the hose did come out because I dropped it because I was kind of busy. Back to the story. We did all of the setup. I was just laboring on my own in the front room. I decided to try and get comfortable by grabbing some blankets, and I got my pillow, and I was like, I'll just lay on my side and I'll just try and get some rest. And by then I'd text my midwife, so that was 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd text her, but I didn't want to call her because it was in the middle of the night, quite early, that I didn't want to bother her. I know it's a midwife's job to be up at any hour for a labouring woman, but I still didn't want to hassle her. So I texted her within half an hour. She hadn't replied, so I did call her. And Joshy was sort of going in and out of the house, like getting some stuff from the shed, which were the tarps, and trying to get the pool set up. So he hooked up the hose to our ensuite shower. So the pool the temperature was perfect right from the get-go, so that was awesome. Didn't have to fiddle around with that. Yeah, he was still setting up and kind of moving back and forth, and he stopped and tried to talk to me, and I was in the middle of a contraction, and then he'd go and then he'd come back, and he's like, I think you need to call the midwife to come now. Coming back to me trying to get comfortable, I couldn't lay on my side. I had to sort of sit up and lean forward because even leaning back was too uncomfortable. Breathing through, and I could kind of feel I had to like keep tilting my body side to side to try to find that comfortable position, because I could really feel my baby moving. I was so in tune to what was going on. The most comfortable position was actually on all fours, so I kind of spun around, got down on my hands and knees. Actually, no, wait. Before that, I decided to braid my hair, because when I was in the kitchen, it was all like in my way. It was getting all like messy, and because my hair's so long at the moment, it's really heavy. So if I put in a top knot, which is usually my go-to, it gets so heavy and then it just falls off, and then it gets in my way, and then I need to continually redo it. So I was like, I'm gonna braid my hair. I remember braiding one side, breathing through, kept braiding. And then when I got to the other side, I was like, holy, I'm like getting really hot and sweaty here. Took me, I don't know, 20 minutes, let's say. And by the time I had tied off the second braid, I was like, Joshy, help me undress, because I'd put on a jumper. I was freezing. I had like socks on, pants on. I was so cold before. Then I was just like all hot and sweaty. So he helped strip me down. Still had the TENS on. I had a wooden comb I was using. It got to the point where I was like, okay, this is getting quite uncomfortable. Like, I'd love to get in the pool right now. I was like, Joshy, is the pool ready? And he's like, oh, just has it got enough water in it? And as you'll see shortly in the video, yes, the pool water level is quite low, but it was because I was like, I can feel a head, and I had my pants on still. I felt like I was gonna push a baby out with my clothes on still. So he helped strip me down, stood up, and I was like walking like a cowboy. Like my legs were so bowed because I could just feel this pressure in my pelvis. We tiptoed into the pool. Soon as I got into the pool, literally as soon as my legs hit the water, I just felt this instant relief, like all my muscles could relax, because the TENS machine, as intense as the contractions were, the TENS, I was ramping it up so much that like my back muscles were so switched on, and that definitely helped distract and take away that discomfort that I was feeling in my lower abdomen, because I kind of had it all at the front, similar to my first labor. It's that strong sort of period pain, cramping right at the front. He'd taken that off before I got in the pool, but as soon as I got into the pool, I just felt all my muscles relax. Like my legs were relaxed, my back, everything could relax. And then I just tuned into my pelvic floor and sort of breathing, because the contractions were coming quite quickly. So as soon as I got in the pool, within a minute, I'd pushed the head out. I remember the look on his face. He was just like, are you serious? I remember I had a bit of space, like I could breathe and talk normally. Midwife's still not here yet. We're still waiting. And I said to Joshy, go open the front door so that she can just come in whenever she gets here. So by the time he'd gone out, he gave me the hose whilst I'm like in labor, about to birth a baby. And I remember I had like grabbed it, and then it slipped and it fell out of the pool. Thankfully the tarps were down and there was water like spraying, and I leant over the edge of the pool, grabbed the hose, put it back in the pool, and her head was there. So Joshy went and opened the front door. Then he came back and I was like, grab my phone. I want you to take a video. So he went and got my phone. I had my hand on her head and I was just waiting for that next contraction. I could feel that sort of ramping up, and I could feel that my body wanted to push, as in, oh, you want to strain and bear down. But I remember through some of the birth education stuff that I did, I really wanted to try and just let my body do what it's meant to do, because the uterus is what contracts and we don't have any control over that. And then of course you can push on top of that. So I really wanted to just try and breathe through it, relax through it, and just let my body do what it wanted to do. And that's why I was so surprised, because her head was out and I felt that little sting and I was able to breathe, and then the contraction was ramping up and I was breathing through it, but I couldn't feel she was actually coming out at that same time. And then she just sort of, the whole body just came out in one. I remember seeing in the water sort of these little arms splaying, and reached down and pulled her up. I felt like a pull back, and then I'd realized her cord was wrapped around her neck. So I untangled the cord from her neck, hugged her into my chest.
There's the handle to your left. You did it. Oh no. Is that a rock?
I did it. Hello. Hello, beautiful cat. Hello. Oh. Hey. Hello. Oh.
Right how the cord was kind of around. Yeah, very cool.
That was just like, I did it. I did it. Like, for me, not scary at all, because I know that babies can be born with the cord around your neck. I could not believe what he had done, and still the midwife hadn't arrived yet. Maybe about 2 minutes, because I said to Josh, okay, go grab some towels so we can keep warm. And then a few minutes later, the midwife walked in through the door. So it was all very fast. It was very quick. So from me going to my water's break and me going to labor until she was born, so 1:30, and then 4:40 she was born. And I remember I didn't feel any pain or discomfort in my perineum. Long after my midwife had checked me, I didn't have any tearing. Apparently I did have a little graze under my urethra, and my midwife told me that it healed within the first week when she was observing afterwards. But no blood loss and no tearing. I was stoked, considering it was so quick, and Bob came with literally only two contractions. Yeah, so we ended up starting breastfeeding in the water. So I stayed in the pool just over an hour waiting for my placenta to come. I was hoping to have a physiological third stage, so not having any injection to help placenta come out. I wanted to try that. Naturally, my midwives were very happy for me to do that. After an hour, they sort of said, okay, maybe you need to change position. So I was still feeding, went up onto my knees. The pool was a little bit cooler by then, so needed to top that up. Decided to stand up and move to the toilet to see if that would help. And I sat in the toilet for about 10 minutes or so. Sort of feel that it was there, but it didn't feel like it was ready. So they just said, stand up. Midwives were holding me up and I was holding onto them. Still feeding. With one big push, I birthed my placenta in standing in the bathroom. It was such a relief. And then I was able to move to the couch for some snuggles, and Joshy went and made me some toast and a cup of tea. And that's when the midwives checked my perineum and said I didn't have any tearing. But yeah, nothing was rushed, didn't have to go anywhere. I was able to just chill and stayed on the couch for those first couple of days. Did I tell you everything? Quick side note, I was in the public system up until 20 weeks, and then I changed to have a private midwife at 21 or 22 weeks. The best decision I've ever made. The hospital system continually telling me about the risks of having a postpartum hemorrhage again, because I did have a big bleed after my first birth, and I do have a blood disorder, von Willebrand's, which puts me at risk of having a bleed. With those two factors, I was continually reminded of that at my hospital appointments. That's my home birth story about how I had the water birth that I had always dreamed of, and I got to have my baby safely at home, even faster than the first. They say the second is faster than the first. It was. It definitely was. Thank you so much for listening to my birth story. I do have my first birth story up on my channel as well, if you're interested in listening back to that. And if you have any questions, I would love to hear them, because I love this stuff. I love talking. I mean, I work in this area with pregnant and postpartum women, and I just love to hear every story. Every story is unique. Yeah, you enjoyed listening to the birth of my second born, my little girl.